Welcome to the BC Society of Transition House webinar series, and this webinar is on resilience, becoming stronger after trauma. My name is Elizabeth Barbeau.
And my name is Christy Delabure-O'Connor.
And we welcome you to join us for about the next hour or so. I'll tell you just a little bit, this is Elizabeth speaking, I'll tell you a little bit about my background. I worked in education, in early childhood education for a number of years, and then worked in the anti-violence field for a number of years of child and youth care counseling.
And this is Christy. I'm very happy to be with you today. I have spent quite a bit of my career in child and youth care working in crisis response and adolescent mental health, and I am also currently a faculty member at the Child and Youth Care program in Douglas College.
We'd like to begin by just letting you know a little bit about the goals for the webinar. By the end of this next hour, we hope that you will learn what resilience means and some of the factors that help develop resilience in children and in adults. We hope that you will learn about some of the risk and protective factors and the role that they play in developing resilience. And we will also have an opportunity to discuss some specific ways that anti-violence workers can help children and adults become more resilient. We're going to go through 4 topics with you during the session. And the first one is, what do we mean by resilience? Then we'll go on to talk about resilience as part of a child's development. We'll talk about some risk and protective factors. And finally, we'll talk about resilience as a learned skill.
So let's begin by talking about what do we mean by resilience. Resilience is a word we use to help us understand how a person is able to face, overcome, and be strengthened by the adversities of life. We have all seen situations where a person lives through a significantly stressful event and seems to bounce back. They remain optimistic and in some ways become even stronger because of the challenge they have survived. Resilience is the word we use to describe this capacity. Resilience is ordinary, not extraordinary. We all have it. Everyone has resilience, but it is not an inborn trait. It involves behaviors, thoughts, and actions that can be learned and developed in anyone. In this webinar, we will offer concrete suggestions of ways to promote the development of resilience in children, in adults that we work with, and within ourselves. Having resilience does not mean that a person stops experiencing difficulties or stresses. Having resilience doesn't make someone immune to feeling pain, sadness, or distress in response to difficult situations. Sadness, anger, and emotional distress are normal reactions to adversity. Resilience describes someone's capacity to make plans, to solve problems, and to carry on in spite of difficulties and painful feelings. A more formal definition of resilience is the process of adapting in a positive way after a significant adversity. There are 3 important parts to this definition. First, resilience is a process that develops within an individual. It is not an inborn trait. A person may be more resilient at some times and less resilient at other times. Also, resilience can grow or diminish over a person's life. In this webinar, we will talk about some of the factors that can support people, and especially children, in becoming more resilient over their lifetime. Second, resilience is a positive adaptation to stress. You may have heard the expression, whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger. This describes how resilience grows as a positive adaptation to stress. For example, living through a terrible storm can cause a person to build stronger relationships with her neighbors. These stronger relationships can help the person when another stressful event occurs. Surviving the storm can also teach her that she is stronger than she knew she was. Third, In order to support the development of resilience, the adversity, the stressful event, must be significant to the individual. An example of a minor stressful event might be a young child being placed in a very large class. An example of a major stressful event might be that same child surviving being the target of a bully or prolonged neglect. It is when we are supported through a major stressful event that our resilience grows stronger. These three parts of the definition are important to anti-violence workers because they help us see that, first of all, we can support adults and children in developing their resilience after a stressful event. And secondly, if people are properly supported, the stresses that they experience can help them become more resilient and therefore more able to withstand significant stresses in the future. The American Psychological Association reports that the primary factor in resilience is having caring and supportive relationships within and outside the family. Relationships that create love and trust, provide role models, and offer encouragement and reassurance help bolster a person's resilience. So what does resilience look like in a child? Edith Grootberg, a researcher with the International Resilience Project in the Netherlands, suggests that children draw their resilience from three sources, which she labels I have, I am, and I can. Children who demonstrate resilience draw from some of these sources. Grootberg describes these sources from the children's point of view as follows. I have people around me I trust and who love me no matter what. People who set limits for me so I know when to stop before there is danger or trouble. People who show me how to do things right by the way they do things. People who want me to learn to do things on my own. People who help me when I am sick, in danger, or need to learn. I am a person people can like and love. I am glad to do nice things for others and show my concern. I am respectful of myself and others. I am willing to be responsible for what I do. And I am sure that things will be all right. For children who believe they can talk to others about things that frighten them or bother them, resilience becomes more possible. I can find ways to solve problems that I face. I can control myself when I feel like doing something not right or dangerous. I can figure out when it is a good time to talk to someone or to take action. And I can find someone to help me when I need it. A child doesn't need all of these features to be resilient, but one feature is not enough. And as anti-violence workers, we can help children learn to develop these features through the activities we share with them. We can also help their mothers and other caregivers learn the importance of nurturing these features in their children. Children need to become resilient to overcome the many adversities they face and will face in life. They cannot do it alone. They need adults who know how to promote resilience and are indeed becoming more resilient themselves. At this point, you may want to pause the webinar as you consider the following questions based on the information we have covered so far. Make notes for yourself that will help you engage in conversations with your coworkers about your ideas. When you are ready to go ahead, you may resume the webinar. So the questions for reflection at this point are, think about a person you know whom you would describe as resilient. It could be a woman or a child you have supported at work, perhaps it's a colleague, or someone from your personal life. Make a list of 3 or 4 characteristics that cause you to describe this person as resilient. How do you think it will help you in your work to recognize resilience in the women and children you work with?
The second topic that we'd like to talk about is resilience as part of a child's development. Dr. Bruce Perry, who's a psychologist with the Child Trauma Academy in Houston, Texas, is an expert in children's mental health and brain development. Perry writes that children become resilient as a result of the patterns of stress and of nurturing that they experience. Perry's research suggests that there are 4 key areas that affect a child's capacity for resilience. They are temperament, attuned caregiving, healthy attachments, and opportunities for practice. And we're going to take a little moment to go through each one of these in turn. Temperament. While children are not born resilient, some are born with a higher threshold for tolerating distress. Some children are easy to comfort and seem to tolerate hunger, noise, transitions, and chaotic situations relatively well. Other children are born much more sensitive to any stimulation. These children can be easily overwhelmed and can take longer to soothe after an upset. It's easy to see how a child with an easy-to-soothe temperament will likely develop greater resilience in later life. Temperament seems to be determined by a combination of genetics and the environment of the womb. Distressed women who live in difficult situations while they are pregnant are more likely to birth children who are harder to soothe. Pregnant women who live in stable circumstances, who are free from violence, and have access to good nutrition and prenatal care have a higher likelihood of birthing a child with the easy-to-soothe temperament. Attuned caregiving. No matter what a child's temperament is, the capacity to deal with stress is shaped by her caregivers. A calm, confident caregiver can help a difficult-to-soothe infant settle and to feel safe. Over time, the child's experience of being soothed and made to feel safe will be a factor in helping the child deal with stress in positive ways. On the other hand, an anxious or inexperienced or isolated caregiver, even one with an easy-to-soothe baby, can ultimately make it more difficult for this child to learn to confidently deal with stress. Imagine how hard it must be for an exhausted, distressed, or inexperienced caregiver to guide an extremely sensitive infant. The fit between caregiver and infant plays an important role in developing resilience. Healthy attachments. Children with insecure attachment to their primary caregivers tend to be less resilient. This may be related to the important role that connecting to other people plays in our capacity to survive traumatic stress. Children with extended and involved family members, invested neighbors, caring teachers, and other supportive community members have far fewer problems following severe trauma. But the ability to take advantage of this support system depends on the child's capacity to connect and relate to other people. This strength develops in the early years of life in the caregiver-child relationship. On the other hand, children who are isolated, who have few social and emotional connections, are very vulnerable to distress and traumatic stress. These children may regress, develop dysfunctional styles of coping, or show symptoms such as impulsivity, aggression, inattention, and depression following a stressful event. The BC Society of Transition Houses has a webinar devoted to the subject of attachment if you would like to learn more about this. Opportunities for practice. In order to become resilient to life's unpredictable and sometimes overwhelming stressors, we must first build and strengthen our stress response systems through practice. Opportunities for gradual exposure to challenges will do this. A young child is continuously exposed to new developmental challenges as he grows. The gradual gaining of new skills gives a child experience with facing a challenge, developing mastery, and experiencing success. The thousands of tiny challenges and successes that a young child experiences can help to build confidence and, over time, resilience. I'll share with you a short example that involves my young son. He recently had to give a presentation in school. Now, my son is in grade 2, and he's in French immersion, and all the children in the class have one opportunity to give a little presentation in class. It was a very short and, in the grand scheme of things, a very minor stress. But for my son, it was the first time he'd done such a thing, and he is an introvert by nature, and he was in tears trying to get himself organized to do this. And I had a chat with the teacher. The teacher was very kind and very loving and also very clear with me that Isaac needed to do this challenge. And she said to me quietly under her breath, "You can't imagine how much better he will feel after he experiences this success." So as a parent, my first impulse was to protect my child from whatever stresses might come along, but I used the educator in me to remind myself that what my child really needs at this stage in life is more practice with new challenges when he's appropriately supported so that he can gain that sense of mastery and he can feel the success that will come and the mastery that comes after having done it. When we encourage children to take opportunities to practice succeeding after stressful events, we help them develop greater resilience for bigger stresses that will come later in their life. Bruce Perry writes that resilience cannot exist without hope. It is the capacity to be hopeful that carries us through challenges and disappointments, loss, and traumatic stress. The child who is capable of thinking that things will be better, that the bad feeling will lessen, and that the situation will improve, this child will be more resilient. Children's cognitive abilities also affect their ability to be resilient. A child who learns quickly and can learn from only a few experiences will have an easier time drawing on past experience to imagine a future that is happier and safer. Finally, a key factor related to resilience is the child's ability to feel that she is special. This belief usually comes from a significant adult in the child's life, a parent, a grandparent, a teacher, reassuring her that she is unique, important, and special. A child's sense of her own unique role in the world can help sustain her during traumatic events. We invite you again to pause the webinar at this point as you consider the following questions based on the information we've covered so far. As you did last time, think about particular children and mothers that you have worked with in your program to help you think of specific examples. Make notes for yourself that will help you engage in conversations with your coworkers about your ideas. When you're ready to go ahead, you can restart the webinar. And here are the reflection questions. Perry says that opportunities for practice are an important component in a child's developing resilience. How can you support a child in gaining this type of practice? Try to come up with 2 or 3 examples of activities you could do with a child that would support the child's developing mastery and experience of success.
So we'll now move our focus to a discussion of risk and protective factors in children. Although many children will experience similar kinds of trauma, each child's response is unique. Resilience is one part of a wide range of factors that influence each child's response to adverse experiences. Researchers often describe specific kinds of risk and protective factors that appear to be linked to a child's ability to cope with experiences more successfully. Risk and protective factors may be linked to the individual child, the child's family, the child's school, her peer group, or the community. Risk factors are negative influences in the life of an individual or a community. Risk factors within and around a child may make it more difficult for the child to accept or benefit from supportive services following a traumatic experience. So this chart outlines some internal and external risk factors. So in the left-hand column, we have internal risk factors such as cognitive barriers. So this might be diagnosed or undiagnosed learning challenges or disabilities. Emotional delays. It's important to remember that when we have a 10-year-old in our office or we're meeting with them in a group, they may emotionally not be at the stage that many 10-year-olds are at. They may be functioning at the emotional age of a 3 or 4-year-old, depending on their life experiences. Mental health concerns are another internal risk factor. Again, many children may be coping with anxiety, difficulties around managing feelings of sadness that may be diagnosed but often are not. Other barriers to receiving and benefiting from services in terms of internal risk factors may be things like physical challenges, a temporary sense of unwellness or illness. If a child is experiencing an illness that's new for them, that presents them in a higher risk category. Some external risk factors that we need to think about in our work include poverty, unstable housing, pressures from peers, parental substance abuse, and lack of understanding by teachers or other professionals. So one of the important things to think about when we think about risk factors is that usually there's a multitude of things going on. Internal risk factors interact with the external risk factors, and so for a child who's living with mental health concerns, if they're also living in a poor neighborhood and have unstable housing, their risk is more complicated and higher than a child who may have similar mental health concerns but has stable housing and is living in a neighborhood where there's generally safe access to food, schooling, places to play. So this is where we're really focusing on the fact that we need to look at the unique constellation of risk for each child that we work with. Protective factors are those positive influences that support a child's healing. So children cope more successfully with adverse experiences when they have strong protective factors, and particularly when these protective factors occur in combination rather than singly. So just as we looked at the constellation of risk factors, we also need to pay attention to what is the unique constellation of protective factors in the child that we're working with. Some of the internal protective factors that we would think about and consider are the child's self-esteem. Do they generally feel positive about themselves? And personality factors, such as being easygoing or having a sense of humor. I think we all have experience with children, some who roll with it more easily and others who experience life as more of a challenge, that they're more worried about what's coming. They may have more concern about what the day will bring, whereas some children are quite comfortable just kind of rolling with the punches, rolling with the day as it unfolds and moving along. External protective factors that we need to think about include secure attachment to a non-abusive parent or caregiver, the existence of networks of personal support, and a supportive community and social frameworks. So the key piece that ties all of these things together is relationship, that this child is connected to a parent or caregiver who provides a safe environment for them, that they have a set of friends and peers that they feel connected to and a sense of belonging with, and that they live within a community that values safety, that has opportunities for children to play and connect with others, and that there are services there to support children and families when difficult situations arise. So alongside our transition house programs, Children Who Witness Abuse counselors work to identify and promote internal protective factors through helping a child develop self-esteem. For example, teaching concrete skills for coping with the abuse they have witnessed. CWWA programs can also help to support external protective factors through supporting the child's mother in obtaining basic needs such as secure housing. Risk factors can also be addressed, sometimes through support for the child's mother and sometimes through referring the child to other resources, for example, treatment programs for mental health or addiction issues. At this point in the webinar, we again invite you to pause and spend a few moments considering your practice and your response to these questions. Make notes for yourself and consider sharing your ideas with your team at the next team meeting. Working with women and children from a strengths-based perspective means taking account of protective factors and supports that are already existing for that family. Take a moment to think about a specific woman or child you have worked with or are working with now. Make a short list of strengths and protective factors present in that person's life. How have you or could you use their strengths to support your work? So spend some time thinking about that, write a few notes for yourself, and when you are ready, you can begin the webinar again.
We're going to move along now to the fourth topic, which is resilience as a learned skill. As we discussed above, resilience indicates the presence of a cluster of skills that allow a child to cope with challenging life circumstances, such as those presented by exposure to violence against his mother. To bring resilience into our work with children exposed to violence, we focus on the strengths that the child possesses, rather than the skills or abilities they might be lacking. When we focus on resilience, we look for ways that the child is coping, and we plan for positive outcomes despite the adversities presented by living with violence. As we've discussed, children are not born resilient, but they are born with an innate capacity for resilience. We can engage with children and youth in ways that foster the development of skills that are helpful in overcoming adversity. Researchers describe resilient children and youth as empathic, caring, flexible, good communicators, and funny. They can make relationships with other people, and they feel connected to those around them. They can think of solutions to challenges they face, and they can ask for help from others when they need it. Resilient children understand that the violent actions of the abuser are cruel, and they think about ways to overcome or cope with the effects of the violence. They have a sense of themselves as independent people and are supported to act in ways that help them exert control over their environment. They also have a sense of purpose, and they develop hope in a positive future. So, what can we do to foster resilience in children? Well, here are some strategies that anti-violence workers can use. First of all, play games and organize activities that encourage perspective taking. This will help children to develop empathy, flexibility, and communication skills. Number 2, encourage community connections, such as community-based sports, arts, and service activities that allow children to develop friendships and a sense of belonging. Children need to know that they belong to more than just their family. Play games and organize activities that foster the development of problem-solving skills and working collaboratively with peers to find solutions together. Remind children that violence at home is not okay. Reassure them that the violence they've been exposed to is cruel and that they can make choices about how to live a violence-free lifestyle. Play games and organize activities that foster a sense of competence and pride in the child's abilities. Make sure that the activities are aimed at the appropriate developmental level for the child. This will be important to the child's sense of competence. Organize activities that help children create a positive vision of their future, one where, in developmentally appropriate ways, they can exert some control over decisions that affect them. Next, we'd like to talk a little bit about how to develop resilience in oneself. And it should be noted that all of these are also things that we can use to support the adults that we work with for developing resilience in themselves. Number 1, make connections. Good relationships with close family members and friends are important, as is accepting help and support from those who care about you. Some people find that being active in civic groups, faith-based organizations, or other local groups can provide social support. Helping others who are in need can also benefit the helper. Number 2, avoid seeing a crisis as insurmountable. We can't change the fact that highly stressful events happen, but we can change how we interpret and respond to these events. It may help to look beyond the current situation to see how things may improve in the future. Or it may help to recall how you have overcome difficulties in the past. Number 3, this is one that I personally find very difficult. Accept that change is part of living. Certain goals may no longer be attainable as a result of adverse situations. Accepting this can help us focus on circumstances that we do have control over. Sometimes I look at my life and say, this is not what I signed up for. And yet, this is what I got. I accept this when I'm having a good day. And I remind myself that changing and moving forward is part of being alive. Number 4, move towards your goals. Develop some realistic goals. And then do something regularly, even if it seems small, that helps you move towards your goals. Ask yourself, what is one thing I know I can accomplish today that helps me move in the direction I want to go? Number 5, take decisive actions. Act on adverse situations as much as you can. Take decisive actions rather than detaching from a problem or a stress and wishing that it would just go away. In my experience, it very seldom does. Number 6, look for opportunities for self-discovery. We often learn something about ourselves, and we may even find that we've grown in some respect as a result of our struggle with loss. Many people who've experienced tragedies and hardship have reported better relationships, a greater sense of strength, increased self-worth, a more developed spirituality, and a heightened appreciation for life. Number 7, nurture a positive view of yourself. This is another one that's easier said than done, I find. Developing confidence in your ability to solve problems and trusting your own instincts helps to build resilience. Number 8, keep things in perspective. Even when facing very painful events, try to consider the stressful situation in a broader context. It can be easy to panic, especially when a current situation triggers old feelings of powerlessness and fear. Try to keep a realistic outlook and avoid blowing the current situation out of perspective. Number 9, maintain a hopeful outlook. An optimistic outlook enables us to expect that good things will happen in our lives. Try visualizing what you want rather than worrying about what you fear. And finally, number 10, take care of yourself. Pay attention to your own needs and feelings. Engage in activities that you enjoy and find relaxing. Exercise regularly, ha 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 ha. Taking care of yourself helps to keep mind and body primed to deal with situations that require resilience. Now, once again, we invite you to pause the webinar and spend a few moments considering your practice and your response to these questions. Make some notes for yourself and consider sharing your ideas with your team at your next team meeting. Thinking back over the 10 suggestions of ways to build resilience in oneself, ask yourself which of these are already part of your daily life. Are there a few that you feel you could begin to incorporate into your life, or that you could use more often than you do now? Can you use this list to help you support a woman escaping violence in developing her own resilience? Here's a summary of what we've talked about in this webinar.
Resilience is a set of ordinary traits and strategies that all of us have to a greater or lesser extent. Resilience is learned over time. On one hand, we should work towards supporting resilience in children and helping their mothers to do so, because the younger a child develops resilience, the stronger it will be. On the other hand, it is never too late to continue building our own capacity for resilience and that of the women we support through our work. If we keep in mind the importance of resilience in responding to traumatic events, we can plan our work with the women and children we support so as to foster greater resilience. A core component of resilience is having caring, supportive relationships within and outside the family. We can work as activists within our communities to create greater support and more connections for all community members. Greater connection to community and reduced social isolation foster the development of stronger resilience. This will help all community members survive and recover from many kinds of trauma, including, but not limited to, family violence.
The following 2 slides offer the references that we consulted in preparing this webinar. And finally, we'd like to thank you for spending this short time with us. And we hope that we've offered you some things to think about and some things to take back to your team.
Thanks very much.